A wrestler slammed a royal guard, thinking he'd put on a show. The result? A hospital visit, a broken collarbone, and jail time. How did it all unfold?
Be sure to subscribe to the channel, and let's promote respect for the Royal Guard together. Let the whole world see how many of us there are.
London was alive with its usual bustling energy. Outside Buckingham Palace, a crowd of tourists eagerly awaited the changing of the guard. Smiles, the clicks of cameras, and awe-struck gazes filled the air, creating a festive atmosphere. Amid this cheerful gathering, one figure stood out like a dark shadow. Jagger Weston, a 32-year-old American, commanded attention with his massive frame. Towering and broad-shouldered, his powerful physique made it clear he was no stranger to the gym. His intense glare and cocky smirk revealed a man who thrived on being the center of attention. Wearing a black t-shirt emblazoned with the defiant slogan, "No Rules," faded jeans and scuffed boots, Jagger looked like a character straight out of an action movie. His every movement exuded confidence, his heavy steps demanding the crowd's gaze. Standing by the barriers, Jagger folded his arms and scrutinized the guards with open disdain. He was surrounded by a group of friends who exchanged uneasy glances as Jagger's loud remarks grew more provocative. "These guys are nothing but mannequins," Jagger shouted, leaning toward his friends. "Look at them. Don't even blink. What is this? Some kind of robot programming?" His friends made weak attempts to quiet him, but their nervous chuckles only fueled Jagger's bravado. Sensing that the crowd's attention was shifting to him, he stepped closer to the barriers and jabbed a finger toward one of the guards. This guard was Henry Blake, a 28-year-old member of the Royal Guard. Average in height, but with a sharp, angular face framed by short chestnut hair peeking out from beneath his tall bearskin hat, Henry was the picture of British discipline. His scarlet tunic gleamed in the sun, a testament to his immaculate professionalism. Unmoving, he stood like a statue, his gaze fixed forward despite the commotion around him. "Hey, you in red!" Jagger bellowed, his voice cutting through the chatter of the crowd. "Show us what you've got. Or are you just here for the photos?" The crowd fell silent. Phones emerged from pockets as tourists began recording, anticipating an explosive confrontation. Murmurs rippled through the gathering as people whispered about the brash American's behavior. Henry remained motionless. His face betrayed no emotion, but the air around him crackled with tension. The crowd began to divide. Some condemned Jagger's antics, while others watched with morbid curiosity. "Hey, buddy, can't you hear me?" Jagger taunted, his voice dripping with mockery. "Or is it some kind of order to stay frozen, even if someone slaps you in the face?" A young woman in a light dress whispered to her companion, "Why is he doing this? It's so disrespectful." Jagger's voice boomed across the square, growing louder and more provocative with each word. The tension escalated, and murmurs of disapproval rippled through the crowd. But instead of backing down, Jagger thrived on the attention, his smirk widening. "All right, people. I'll bet $10 he won't even blink," he yelled, turning to the crowd. His friends exchanged worried glances, their nervous smiles faltering. Henry stood firm, a pillar of discipline amidst the chaos. Inside, he sensed that the morning might not end peacefully. The crowd held its collective breath as Jagger took another step closer to the barriers. The atmosphere grew heavy, as if all of London was waiting for what would happen next. Jagger moved forward like a gladiator stepping into an arena, his broad shoulders taut with energy. Swinging his arms in exaggerated motions, he mimicked a pre-fight warm-up. The loud cracking of his neck echoed, and his cocky grin screamed defiance. "Jagger, what are you doing?" One of his friends, a bespectacled man, nervously grabbed his arm. "This isn't a match. Leave him alone. This is just their job." Jagger brushed him off with a laugh, his eyes gleaming with mischief. "A job? This is a circus," he sneered, nodding toward Henry. "He can't even look me in the eye. A real soldier wouldn't act like this." The crowd buzzed with disapproval, their murmurs growing louder. Disgusted voices emerged from different corners. "Enough! Stop embarrassing yourself! Show some respect for their traditions. Someone needs to remove him. This is out of line." But Jagger seemed to feed off the outrage. He took another step forward, crossing the invisible line between provocation and outright disrespect. With one deliberate motion, he stepped over the barrier, standing face to face with Henry, who remained resolutely still. Jagger loomed over Henry, his broad chest nearly brushing the guard's pristine tunic. Raising his arms mockingly, he waved his hands in front of Henry's face, as though testing the limits of his restraint. "Come on, give me something. Anything," Jagger goaded. "You're not even going to blink, huh?" His provocations grew more aggressive. He threw mock punches at the air near Henry's face, making exaggerated noises. The crowd gasped, with some people inching forward, hoping to intervene, while others stood frozen in shock. Henry, a monument of self-control, remained stoic. Inside, however, every muscle in his body tightened, preparing for the worst. His training demanded discipline, but he braced himself for the possibility that Jagger would cross the line. "You're just a toy," Jagger yelled, leaning so close to Henry that their faces were inches apart. His voice carried an edge of menace. "Let me show these people how easy it is to break a toy." The crowd erupted into cries of protest. Someone shouted, "Stop this now! This is insane! Call the police!" Even Jagger's friends, now frantic, tried to pull him away. "Jagger, you don't know what you're doing!" one of them yelled. Jagger shrugged them off with ease, his eyes locked on Henry. His towering frame and brazen attitude cast a dark shadow over the scene. Henry, unwavering, stood his ground, his calm demeanor silently challenging Jagger's bravado. The tension was palpable. Every eye was on the wrestler as he raised his hand higher, preparing to strike. The crowd held its breath, their horror reaching a fever pitch. Then Jagger laughed, a sharp, mocking sound that cut through the silence. "If you won't act, I'll give you some help," he sneered, raising his arm. The crowd gasped. Phones recorded every moment. Cries of alarm echoed, "He's crossed the line! Somebody stop him!" But Jagger ignored them all, stepping even closer to the guard. His next move would shatter the delicate boundary between spectacle and crime. The crowd froze in horror as Jagger, like a predator closing in on its prey, approached the guard. His face displayed cold determination, and his movements carried the precision of a professional fighter used to physical confrontation. Despite the danger, Henry remained in place, holding his typical stance. His face was inscrutable, but his eyes betrayed a hint of unease. "You brought this on yourself, Red," Jagger taunted, raising his hands as if squaring off in a fight. Before anyone could intervene, Jagger lunged forward, his massive arms wrapped around Henry's torso, gripping him tightly. It all happened in mere seconds, though to the crowd, time seemed to slow down. A collective gasp erupted as the onlookers realized what was about to unfold. "Stop! Are you out of your mind?" A woman near the barrier screamed. But Jagger wasn't listening. With a loud grunt, he flexed his muscles and lifted Henry off the ground as if he weighed no more than a child. Despite the powerful hold, Henry attempted to break free, but the movement was too swift and overpowering. Jagger spun his body with practiced precision, setting Henry up for a textbook wrestling throw. And then it happened. What everyone feared. With a resounding crash, Henry was slammed onto the cobblestones. The sound of the impact echoed across the square, silencing the crowd. Henry's bearskin hat tumbled off his head, rolling across the pavement. "He just slammed the guard!" a man in glasses exclaimed, holding up his phone to record. Henry hit the ground hard, landing on his back. His pristine red uniform was now dirtied and crumpled. Pain distorted his face as he attempted to sit up, grabbing at the ground with his good hand for support. However, a sharp jolt stopped him as searing pain shot through his shoulder. His left arm hung limp, a clear sign of serious injury. The crowd erupted into chaos. Some people shouted in panic, others recorded videos, and a few tried to call for help. "Someone call the police! This is an attack!" "He broke his arm. Stop him now." Jagger stepped back, his chest heaving as if from exertion. A smug grin stretched across his face as he raised his arms triumphantly, celebrating as though he had just won a wrestling match. "That's how it's done. This is what happens when you face a real fighter," he boomed, addressing the crowd. His moment of triumph didn't last long. Officers from the Royal Guard quickly converged around Henry. One of them, a tall man with sharp features, acted immediately. He crouched beside the injured guard while issuing commands to his colleagues. "Secure the area. Call for medical assistance. Detain that man." Jagger began to protest, but the officer, filled with determination, was already striding toward him. Despite his injury, Henry managed to straighten himself slightly. His face remained stoic, though inside he felt a surge of anger. Even in pain, he maintained the dignity of his role. The Royal Guard officers moved with precision, as if rehearsing for such a moment. The crowd parted instinctively, forming a circle around Jagger. At the front stood the lead officer, his steely gaze fixed on the wrestler. His sharp black uniform and commanding voice left no room for negotiation. "You are under arrest for assaulting a member of the Royal Guard. Get on the ground now." Jagger, still failing to grasp the gravity of the situation, took a step back, raising his hands. His expression was a mix of defiance and confusion. "Come on, it was just a slam. I was showing him a few moves," he argued, glancing at the crowd as if searching for allies. But the crowd was far from supportive. Outrage erupted from all sides. "Serves you right! That's unacceptable! Respect the guards! You've crossed the line!" Jagger tried to speak again, but the officers weren't interested in listening. One of them swiftly stepped forward, seizing Jagger's arms and twisting them behind his back. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed in the tense air. The crowd roared in approval, some even clapping. "Get down!" another officer barked, his tone cold and commanding. Realizing resistance would only make things worse, Jagger reluctantly complied, lowering his hulking frame to the cobblestones. His face twisted with frustration as he muttered, "It was just a joke." The applause grew louder. Spectators shouted, "This isn't a wrestling ring. You got what you deserved. Shame on you. The Royal Guard doesn't tolerate this." Meanwhile, medics rushed to Henry's side. The young guard sat upright, his face pale, his breathing labored. He clenched his teeth against the pain, his left arm dangling uselessly. One of the medics, a woman with cropped brown hair and gloved hands, quickly examined his shoulder. "You have a likely fracture. We'll stabilize it here, but you'll need hospital treatment," she said, nodding to her colleagues. Henry tried to protest, his voice steady despite the pain. "I can stand. I need to return to my post." But the medics were firm. Carefully, they helped him to his feet and onto a stretcher. Despite his condition, Henry kept his head held high. The crowd, seeing his resilience, began to cheer. "He's a true professional. What composure, even after all that." As Jagger lay on the pavement, still trying to justify his actions, the officers hauled him to his feet, ready to transport him to the station. His face, a mix of anger and confusion, no longer commanded the attention of the crowd. "Get him out of here," the lead officer ordered, casting one last stern look at Jagger. The ambulance pulled away, taking Henry to the hospital, and with it went the tension of the morning. Left behind was the murmur of the crowd, cameras still capturing every detail, and a collective sense that this incident would be remembered for years to come. The video of the incident, recorded by dozens of onlookers on their phones, went viral within hours. News headlines burst with dramatic captions. "Attack on a Royal Guard, a symbol of resilience and honor." "Hero in a red uniform, how the Guard maintained dignity despite the tourists' shameful actions." Social media erupted in outrage. The footage showed Jagger, grinning broadly, moving closer to Henry before demonstratively performing the throw. But what shocked viewers even more was the moment when the guard, despite suffering a serious injury, struggled to maintain his composure and stance until medics helped him onto a stretcher. Comments poured in by the thousands. Many expressed anger and disapproval. "How can someone be so irresponsible? That's a guard, a symbol of British tradition. Disgraceful. This tourist deserves serious punishment." Others expressed admiration for Henry. What composure! Even after being injured, he stood strong. The guard demonstrated what true honor and dignity look like. The video not only sparked a flood of comments, but also ignited heated debates. Some argued that Jagger should face a lifetime ban from entering the UK, while others demanded strict legal action. One of the most popular posts on Twitter read, "An attack on a guard is an attack on all of Britain. Jagger Weston must face the full weight of the law." Meanwhile, Jagger, under arrest, tried to defend himself. In a recording from the police station, he stated, "It was just a joke. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. This is all a misunderstanding." However, his words only fueled public outrage further. Comments flooded in. "A joke? Seriously? He slammed a guard to the ground and calls it a joke? Reckless and disgusting. Time to put an end to people like this. The Royal Guard is not a place for entertainment." Even international media took notice. American and European outlets published articles with headlines like, "American Tourist Disrespects British Traditions, a National Embarrassment." "When People Forget Boundaries, a Lesson in British Resilience." Public pressure mounted, making it clear that this would not end with a mere apology. Jagger's actions had become a symbol of what happens when one forgets the boundaries of respect and responsibility. The courtroom was packed. At the center of attention stood Jagger Weston, whose bravado had evaporated. He now looked exhausted and defeated, his trademark smirk replaced with an expression of regret. Behind him stood his attorney, doing his best to mitigate the gravity of the charges. On the judge's desk lay files filled with evidence, videos of the incident, medical reports, and written testimonies from dozens of witnesses. The people in the gallery sat in tense silence, listening intently. Among them were supporters of Henry, who had become an unintentional symbol of honor and resilience. The judge, an elderly man with stern features and deep-set eyes, fixed his gaze on Jagger. His voice was steady, but every word carried weight. "Mr. Weston, your actions not only endangered another person's health, but also insulted one of the most respected traditions of our country. Your attack is not merely a violation of the law, it is an affront to the very symbol of discipline and honor." Jagger lowered his head. His attorney tried to interject. "Your Honor, my client deeply regrets his actions. He fully acknowledges his mistake." But the judge raised his hand, cutting him off, his voice growing firmer. "Does he? I find it hard to believe that someone who calls this a joke understands the gravity of his actions." The gallery murmured, with many nodding in agreement. After a pause, the judge continued. "Given the evidence presented and the severity of the injury caused, this court sentences you, Mr. Weston, to 10 months in prison for assaulting a public servant and disturbing the peace." The sentence landed like a hammer blow. The crowd erupted in whispers and murmurs. Jagger, now fully grasping the consequences of his arrogance, buried his face in his hands. His shoulders trembled, but the sight elicited no sympathy. Henry, sitting in the courtroom in a neatly tailored civilian suit, observed the proceedings with calm dignity. His left arm was still in a sling, but he appeared much improved after his surgery. When the judge announced the sentence, the crowd in the gallery broke into applause. Someone shouted, "Justice has been served!" After the trial, reporters surrounded Henry. Cameras flashed as they asked him for a comment, but the guard responded with a composed smile. "I was simply doing my duty. Our job is to protect traditions and uphold the honor of our country." Later, Henry received a letter of gratitude from the royal family, personally signed by the monarch. The letter praised his resilience and professionalism and expressed deep appreciation for his service. The moment was captured on camera and became a highlight of the evening news. The aftermath. The story of Jagger and Henry became a societal lesson. Social media commentators continued to discuss the incident, emphasizing its moral. Even an unmoving figure can be stronger than someone who tries to break it. Henry became a symbol of dignity, proving that behind the stoic facade of the royal guard lies not only iron discipline, but also true human strength. Jagger, on the other hand, left the courtroom a broken man, facing not just the legal consequences, but also the disdain of a global audience. His name became synonymous with recklessness and disrespect. The story, with its dramatic twists and profound message, resonated far beyond the borders of Britain, reminding the world of the importance of respect for traditions, for people, and for the values that bind society together.